Jeffrey Sachs with us of the Earth Institute, Columbia University. Too many things to talk about, and one of the things we could talk about, Professor Sachs, is what we just heard from Sheila Bair. I heard pretty much predictable. It was an exclusive interview, and yet what I heard is what politicians say. In your years of following political economics, are the politicians today more on script, or are they as informative as they were 20 or 30 years ago?
I'm not sure we can compare, but let's just say they're on script because they're being very cautious, and we don't really hear very much. I think one of the really stark facts of America today, by the way, is that the political debate is bypassing public opinion on most things. And so we are constantly saying, what does the public want? But the politicians actually don't care what the public wants on crucial issues. This tax deal at the end of last year, I'm still a little bit steamed about it, but one thing I did was to go back and check what did the American people say about the Bush tax cuts over the 12 months leading up to the final deal. And they were in strong majority to not have the tax cuts extended at the top. Didn't matter at the end. President said, oh, my back's to the wall. His back wasn't to the wall. They wanted this. This was a deal above the American people or behind the backs of the American people. That's what's concerning me. And I think that we're just hearing what lobbyists want us to hear. Right. We're just hearing what the deal makers want us to hear, but we're actually not getting a politics that reflects what Americans would like.
Kid him is the other laureate from Gary, Indiana, Joseph Stiglitz, your colleague at Columbia University. He talks of globalization. There's a new globalization. What's the new globalization for Jeff Sachs?
I think that we are in a obviously radically transformed world right now. Geopolitics is changing. We have the president of China arriving today. Every place that China goes right now, they're making deals, they're changing power structures, they're buying commodities, they are reshaping the whole world politically and economically. That's number one. Second, I think that the power of big internationally mobile capital, not just financial power, but political power, has really changed the name of the game right now. Our society is more unequal, more imbalanced, and this is part of globalization as well.
You said you just got back from Africa. Here's a chart here, elegant chart for the day, folks. The Sachs prescription for Africa normalized back a decade. There's Brazil per capita real GDP, Nigeria and Kenya bringing it up. But it wasn't too scientific here, but there are three different stories there. You've got a resource-rich Nigeria in some domestic chaos. Kenya is just a basket case, is how I'm going to put it as an amateur. Give us the state of Africa right now. When I talk to Africans, they say, look, we're making progress. Do you buy it?
I do, actually. And I think what's interesting there, think about Nigeria, one of the world's most unstable places, poorly governed places over a long stretch. They just had a very stable, accepted primary election for the next presidency. The incumbent won, but fair and square. And I think Nigeria actually is about to enter a long period of stability, I would say, with high energy prices, high commodities prices, a lot of income coming into the treasury, and politics actually working surprisingly well. Kenya, I'd put in the same category, actually.
Really?
It's very interesting what's happening. And again, China, I think this is a major factor. They got a market in Africa now. Commodities prices are strong. The world wants what Africa can sell. And the places that are finding a path to political stability are finding a path to pretty rapid economic growth right now. So African average growth, 6-7% per year, not bad.
Much better than the stereotype.
Absolutely, and this is something new. After the 2008 crash here, Africa maintained positive growth. It kept even keel. It bounced back pretty quickly. I'd credit a lot of India and China for that, but I'd also credit a lot of indigenous, homegrown, new political stability in Africa is playing a very positive role.
So if we have you and Bill Easterly on the set at the same time, there won't be a fist fight?
I don't think there'd be a fist fight. And I'd say, look, things are working, and we're starting to see the upturn. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Just go, Simon Johnson, Bloomberg. See this at Bloomberg.com. We mentioned Mohammed El-Arian's piece. City Weekend shows too big to fail endures. If the big banks get large enough, we'll become like Ireland today. Saving those institutions will ruin us fiscally, destroy the dollar as a haven for currency, and end financial life as we know it. The usual quiet statement from Simon Johnson. Europe's a mess. What's the Sachs prescription for Europe?
First of all, I think Europe's going to get out of it, so I'm more on the optimistic side on Europe. Basically, Greece is going through austerity after a decade without it.
Right.
The UK, I think, has a good plan in place. Northern Europe, Germany on up, is doing very well this year. So I actually think Europe's going to pull through. They're still feeling the trailing edges of the 2008 financial crisis, all of the bubbles of Spain, of Greece, of Ireland. The one part that I think is trickiest is actually Ireland, because Ireland's not just a matter of public debt being too large, but they threw that blanket guarantee over the whole banking sector.
Was that a mistake?
It was a mistake. It was too much, and it was too broad, and it put too huge a fiscal burden on. And what I've always thought is the governments absolutely should not default. But when it comes to working out the private commercial institutions, there, I think that more market-based resolution would have made sense.
You saw a rapid consolidation of wealth and concentration of wealth in Russia after the attempted effort at capitalism. Do we have a risk here across developed nations of having too much concentration of banking power coming out of a crisis? That seems to be what Professor Johnson's suggesting.
Well, it's not just out of the crisis. The last 30 years has led to the greatest concentration of wealth and incomes in American history. And 2008 seemed that it was going to dent it, that it was going to be an occasion to reconsider that. So far, it hasn't been. Washington's worked overtime just to get us back to the old bubble. And we really haven't gone to the deeper questions that were really posed by that wealth and income inequality and the irresponsibility of the banks and the regulators. So we never really did face up to this crisis yet in its deeper form. We managed it, but we haven't faced up to the real social lessons from it.
Global warming. Let's go back to Jeff Sachs. Too much information here, Elian. Bring it up as quick as you can. Too much information. This is from the Earth Institute and the Review of Geophysics. Sachs in search of global equilibrium, global temperature anomalies. I'm sorry, it's a Gartman trend. That line moves from the lower left to the upper right. That's not a good line, is it?
Well, this past year was tied for the warmest year in history of the recorded record. We're absolutely flying off the charts. We still have a large part of this country saying they don't believe it, but nature doesn't care what they believe or not. We're warming. This is real and it's serious. And we've wasted now, since we signed the treaty on climate change, we've wasted 18 years of doing nothing. And the Senate has been a disgrace in this, and it's likely to continue to be so.
I wanted to read this as we go out with Jeff Sachs. I want you to talk about this, Jeff. It's read this. We usually do it at the end of the show. We do it now. It's a shameless plug for Jeff Sachs. There it is. Shameless plug right over the read this.
Right.
Jeff Sachs, The End of Poverty. It'll be out DVD here this year. Every actor in Hollywood wants to do this. This book really had an impact. How are you going to make your U.S. book coming out in a bit have the same impact?
Well, we'll see. I was just in Mozambique. I was delighted. The cabinet came. Please sign my book. Sign my book. It was a lot of fun because this book was read in poor countries around the world, and I think that it had some ideas that are proving to be useful, and it just doesn't get more gratifying than that. So I'm hoping that I can help push forward a real debate in the United States about our politics going beyond some of the short-term issues. We're much too short-term. We got to go deep right now to understand what's happening in our country.
Never enough time. We're going to have Jeff Sachs come back with us here in a bit, folks. A couple weeks, maybe a month or so, get him out to flog his new book on the American economy.